So the parts of a retinue, there's the head retinue, or head of court. Down here in the West, we call it court, by the way. So it is entirely possible that I will switch back and forth between saying retinue and court. They are the same thing. Sorry, something just fell down. I thought it was the dog. Yeah, never mind. So the head of retinue. Think of that person as the royal stage manager, the office manager, the personal assistant to the crown. They're really the ones that have the closest contact with the crown. They're responsible for overseeing all aspects of the retinue and the royalty. Often acts as a personal assistant to the crown. And there's varying degrees of that. Obviously, each reign is different. I've worked on multiple reigns for the same royal couple, and each reign is different. Not just each royal couple is different, right? So there's a lot of flexibility in who does what. But the head of retinue is really kind of the buck stops here. There is a scribe. The scribe doesn't necessarily do scribal arts. They just have to be really organized. It helps if they're an accomplished scribe, but it's not required. They just have to organize and have a good network. The scribe also gets a lot of confidential information. They know the awards that are going to be given before anybody else does, right? It goes from the crown to the scribe, sometimes before even the head of retinue. There is a herald. The herald arranges for court heralds, if like stunt heralds, if they can't be at the event. They help prepare for court business. Again, trustworthy with confidential information. You'll hear this a lot because nobody wants to hear about an award before they actually receive it. The captain of the guard is, for a royal retinue, is often a newly made knight or an up-and-coming fighter that is likely they're a high-ranking unbelted fighter. The captain of the guard will schedule guard shifts, direct setting up the royal pavilion, general tote and carry, lifting, fetching, physical stuff. The court coordinator. Not every reign has a court coordinator. I highly recommend it, but it's not. But like I said, each reign is different. The court coordinator works with the crown and the royal, the head of retinue, to take and arrange court business, direct the ladies in waiting during court, prepares the court area, like making sure the thrones are set up right. There's a table, there's water, scrolls, all of that stuff. And also handles the cleanup afterwards. One of my huge pet peeves is when after court, you go behind the royal pavilion, or the back of the royal pavilion, and it just looks like a yard sale back there. There's trash and empty bottles and whatever. So part of the court coordinator's job, in my opinion, is to find people to help clean that up. Hopefully everybody is on board, but for any potential retinue court members, when after court is done, you've processed out, come back to the back of the behind the thrones and just help clean up. If everybody puts in 5 minutes, it is done. So that's my soapbox on that. The largesse coordinator will receive largesse from the event, whether that comes from the crown or wherever that largesse is coming from, and collects it all, hopefully catalogs it, and then prepares gifts to go back out again from the crown. So these go to autocrats, visiting royalty, other nobility, and hopefully is writing and sending thank you notes. That's another one of my things that I think is an important feature, is not just thanking. So largesse comes in kind of two different modes. It either is given to the crown from other royalty, in a largesse exchange, or there are members of the populace that donate largesse often in like groups, and it could be 20 of the same thing, it could be 20 individual items, whatever. It is really important, in my opinion, for the donors of the largesse, the makers of the largesse, to be thanked for their work, because it is a lot of effort and time and materials, etc. So again, another one of I have a lot of soapboxes, by the way. Guards provide ceremonial protection during court and throughout the day. Hopefully there's no need for actual protection, but I have seen occasions where a guard has had to run interference and be a little bit of a linebacker and block somebody. Assisting with carrying things, pavilion setup, general labor, fetching people, lots of running around trying to find people. Guards are great for that. Ladies in waiting, or lords in waiting, or attendants. There are a million different ways it can be said. I've got ladies in waiting in here from my notes from when I first taught this class probably 15 years ago. So they attend the royalty as needed throughout the day. This could be sitting outside of meetings while the royalty is in a meeting, watching tournaments, going to Merchant's Row with the Queen, or attending, making sure that there is on the warfield, there is a member of the retinue that is there, that the king knows, hey, that's my person, right? Because you just never know when something is gonna need to be fetched or whatever. It also behind the scenes in court, and we'll go on to court in a minute, but handling scrolls and award necklaces, gifts, organizing things, again, fetching. There's a lot of fetching in being on retinue. Campmaster, that person organizes the royal encampment, generally contacts the autocrat before the event to, say, hey, we need a 50 by 100 spot or whatever, and then works with the autocrat to make sure that's taken care of. Cooks, I personally believe that all royal, anybody reigning needs to have a cook. It's usually someone that is part of the royalty's personal household, a trusted friend, someone they're close with. And they may need assistance delivering food to the royalty that are stuck in meetings or, attending the tournament or whatever. Cooks are really important because nobody wants cranky royalty, and that's what we get when they don't eat. Childcare or dog care, if applicable. Reigns can be really, really hard on royal children. I'm sure Clovis has some experience with that, because, kids want to go play or do whatever, or they're missing their best friend's birthday party because we have to go to this stupid tournament. And so having childcare is a very important aspect if needed. Again, it's usually a close, trusted friend. And it should be someone that is consistent, and that the child is comfortable with. And same with dogs. I get dog duty a lot because I'm a dog person. I'd rather have dogs around me than children any day. So dog walking is more important than you think of. As a dog parent, the last thing I want is to know that my dog has been tied up for 6 hours because I can't get away. Clothiers and seamstresses. It's not necessarily part of the court of the retinue, but it is a very important thing that is, it's noticed when it's not there, let's put it that way. Usually designs the clothing for a reign, assembles and organizes people to sew and directs the process. And again, this is definitely for more for royal court. The difference with baronial court is it's a much longer stretch for baronial court. So you don't necessarily need to have new clothes every 2 months for different crown tournaments and stuff. Excuse me. So where do you get retinue? Retinue could be household members of the royal household, household members of the reigning couple. That's where I'm headed for. There could be people that you know from previous retinues. They could be recommended people. One of the things that I do when I'm head of retinue is I reach out to barons and baronesses that I know and say, hey, do you have any up and coming retinue people that you think would benefit from some royal experience? And I usually get a couple of great people. So some things to consider when you are either you're asked to be on a retinue or you want to be more involved with that. Some really important thing is compatibility. Do you get along with the royalty, and do you get along with their household members, their squires, their friends, the people that are around on a regular basis? I early on worked a retinue for a royal retinue for someone that I didn't know very well, and it was a great opportunity. I'm like, this is fantastic. I'll learn so much. I did not like the person, some of the people in the household, and I didn't realize that because I didn't know them. So it got a little awkward at times. Also think about your personal and your family schedule. Does your work schedule allow you to travel? Can you spare time during the week to do pre-planning and organizing stuff? That's really a lot for head of retinue and scribe and clothier and things like that. That there's a lot that happens behind the scenes there. But even for any guard, lady in waiting, you're spending more time with the crown at events than you are with your own family. Often, not always. So yeah, do you have the time to do this? And be honest with yourself. Finances. So I realize that I am an exception, and I put that out there right now. I counted up the last royal retinue that I was head of. I spent about $5,000 in 6 months of my own money on the reign. And that was travel. It was gas and hotels and food and site fees and stuff. That is not normal at all. But just think about it. If you want to be at, half of the events that your royalty is at, that's going to take time and money. So just doesn't mean you can't do it, but just think about that. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. So, court. You know what? We're going to come back to court. I am going to, there's some really important attributes of being on retinue, and this is all levels. Most of this I stole from Dame Mira, who was the head of court for the first retinue that I was ever on. She has since doesn't do SCA and has moved recently to Texas. So, but these were all brilliant, brilliant pieces, and I pretty much just stole them. So, she knows I stole them now, so it's good. So top of the list is be discreet. You are going to see and hear things that the populace is not privy to. You're going to see people at their best and at their not so much their best. You're going to be exposed to confidential matters, potential gossip fodder. Keep in mind that it's not your place to discuss these matters unless the crown seeks your input. There's a whole lot of you see, but you don't see, and you hear, but you don't hear. People will also assume that if you're on retinue, you know everything, you know what's going on, and that they can get information from you. Whether that is upcoming awards, or that is, oh, did you hear that fight between so-and-so and so-and-so, and there's going to be a banishment, and just tell them, you know what, I don't know, not my place. There's politely telling the person that you can't discuss the matter if they are concerned and have an opinion that they need to speak to the crown directly. Unfortunately, there are times when something that you as a retinue person say that can then be taken as, well, I heard it from the crown's lady in waiting that such and such. So it just, zip it is really the best policy. Be prepared. You never know what you're going to come up against. So expect anything and everything. This is your Boy Scout moment. Murphy's Law will happen. So some of the things that I think of to come to the top of mind is familiar yourself with the site, especially if it's an indoor site. Where are the bathrooms? Because it is entirely possible that the crown will not actually know where they are, and they have 45 seconds in the middle of their day and they have to pee. They're going to look at you and say, where's the bathroom? So where are people camped at camping events? Not, obviously not everybody and their brother, but it's good to know maybe where the other baronial encampments are, where the king and queen's camp and the prince and princess, like just some major points, major people. I am a big fan of a queen's bag. I actually like to have two, one for whoever's attending the queen and one for whoever's attending the king, because they're not always together at the same spot. In this bag it's your Boy Scout bag. It has a watch, the event schedule, paper, pens, breath mints, safety pins, chapstick, EpiPen if your royalty has a severe bee allergy, like whatever might, think of it as a woman's purse, hopefully with some less crud in it. But all of the important things that might be needed in a day should be in this bag and on an attendant so that the crown knows, hey, that's my person, right? It helps. It often helps, this bag, it can help identify who the attendant is. Let's say the crown has been in a meeting and there was a change of attendant, a change of guard, and they come out of the meeting and they actually don't know who is their attendant right now, but they see the bag. They're like, oh, that's my bag, that's my person. So it's a good visual cue. And then also it's got everything in it, possibly need in there. Be alert, be aware of what's going on around you. Sometimes the crown needs to conduct a conversation in private. If so, discreetly help keep people away. This can be as simple as just some, the crown is here talking, you can't see me, I'm putting up a hand over here. The crown is over here talking to some people and you're standing over here looking away from them and kind of giving the physical space. And sometimes the crown wants to get out of a conversation that they don't want to be in anymore. I highly recommend some sort of a signal that is hopefully not, the ear tugging is a little too obvious. Carol Burnett did that for too long. But some sort of a signal that is, they help get me out of this situation. And that can be, be worked out. I recommend you work it out early on and before you need it, because at some point it's going to be needed. And if whatever the signal is, you spot the signal and you, if necessary to get the crown out of a situation, you get to be the bad guy. Because it's very hard sometimes for the crown to be the bad guy and say, hey, I got to go right now. So instead, I love to use, hey, so-and-so, need you to come sign scrolls right now. And that is probably the easiest way, because everybody's like, oh, scrolls. Okay, scrolls wins. So yeah, signing scrolls is a great way to get royalty out of whatever they're into. Be an example. It talks to us a little bit about this, but what you say and do can reflect on the crown, even if that was not the intent, especially if the observer does not approve of your behavior. I am not a good person sometimes, and there have been times where I have been spoken to because as a member of the retinue, I was getting into shenanigans that were unapproved of, and I totally deserved that talking down that I got. So that's, be an example, because if you're on a retinue and people know you're on a retinue, that will reflect on the crown. Behave as though you're always being watched or judged, because you kind of are. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Look and act the part of a royal court, a royal, if you think about the medieval aspect of court and the deference, that's what we're looking for. Be neutral. This kind of goes to what you say and can, what you do and say can reflect on the crown. But be careful discussing your opinions in open forums. Email lists, not that those exist anymore. I should probably update this. Facebook groups. If you have an opinion and everybody's welcome to the opinion, but make sure that you preface it with, this is my opinion. This is Ula speaking. This is not the crown. Be courteous. Many people will ask you questions. They'll want to speak to the crown. If the crown doesn't have the bandwidth or they're in the middle of something else, politely get the person's name. That's where the pen and paper in the bag comes helpful. find out what they need, what they're looking for, and about how long they think it's going to take. They'll say 5 minutes, plan for 15. If they say this is going to be an hour, I need this is a big deal, then you just need to be able to kind of prioritize and take time. And then there are times when this could be someone's first only interaction with a crown. We want to make sure that it's part of court, part of theater, which we'll get to in a second. A lot of being on retinue is being theater, but sometimes it's very hard for people to approach the crown, and they get crown fear or peer fear. It is very important to be courteous and be polite, because if this is someone's only experience and they're already hesitant, they come up and say, hey, I would just like to introduce myself. And what they get back was, the crown doesn't have time for you. Even if that's not the crown's opinion, it's gonna be a bad experience. Nobody wants that. Be human. Remember, the crown is human too. There are times that they are hot and cranky and tired and late and have to pee, and we don't expect them to be perfect all the time, because it's not going to happen. Also, remember that you get hot and cranky and tired and have to pee. So if that happens, even if it's not the end of your shift, you need a break, then there are ways to find somebody that can relieve you, whether that is just looking across the field to someone else that is on the same retinue and saying, come here, I gotta pee. Sometimes all you need is a short break, glass of ice water, and you're like, oh, yep, everything's right with the world again. Jump right back into it. Be honest. If you have a problem with another member of the retinue or even the crown, don't let it fester. Be an adult. Talk to them. Talk to the person honestly in private, and see if you can work it out. If you feel a mediator is needed, or the issue wasn't resolved, then go to the head of retinue or the head guard, or if there's a royal advisor or something like that. There's always a solution to a problem. You just have to nut up and be an adult. Be generous. Share both the work and the breaks. There is a tendency to, be a martyr. And I stood there. I was on court for 6 hours yesterday. Nobody wants that. If nothing else, you just kind of sound like a dick. And B, someone else doesn't have that opportunity now because you were there for 6 hours. If everybody takes an hour, then you get 6 people that get that same experience that you had. There's plenty of work to be done. There is no need to be a martyr or to burn out. This is one of my favorite ones. And the end. Be aware that it will end. At the end of the reign, you are now, I joke, but it's kind of true. When the end of a reign comes and I'm no longer on a retinue, I am now homeless and unemployed. I get to an event on a Friday night. I'm like, I don't actually know where to camp because I've been camping with the crown for the last 5 months, whatever. And I kind of wander around going, wow, what am I supposed to be doing now? Because I'm not organizing and I'm not doing. But, retinue has its perks, like knowing where you're going to camp when you get onto site. But everything comes to an end. Excuse me. But the great part about it ending is that you can then go on and do whatever you were doing before. Get back onto it, go on to another retinue, realize that retinue is not for you. Maybe it wasn't a good experience. That's fine too. But it's definitely, I do joke about it, but the first event after I'm off of a retinue, I really am just wandering around aimlessly. It's the stupidest thing. But you now have free time to do your art, to fight, to do a service that is not related to the crown. All right, I'm going back up here. So, court. And when I'm talking about court, I'm not talking about just when you are, the crown is sitting there and there's a huge audience. Court is all of the theater. It is, court is all of the theater. It is anytime the crown is out and about, they are on display. They are being watched. They are, anytime there is something shiny up here, they're on display. That means that everyone around them is also on display. So think about that in your interactions with them. Always have deference to the crown. There are exceptions to this. Generally in the royal encampment, it's a no hat zone, and once you're in there, it's politeness is important, but you don't necessarily have to every single time the crown walks by stand up and drop everything you're doing. But do look up and acknowledge them and make sure they don't need anything. So anytime you're with the crown, you're going to have your picture taken. Mind the resting bitch face. There are so many pictures of me standing behind the thrones, and I'm like, oh God, what was I thinking? The camera will find you in the worst position. It's like on a Zoom meeting when everything freezes and you're like this. Yeah, happens all the time. Some other things about court, be aware of body language. Again, this is theater. Everyone is watching, not just when you're behind the thrones, but when you're out and about. Then I will say this one from a personal experience. Ladies, be careful when you're bending over and wearing a low-cut dress. I have a tattoo on my chest, and there are times where it shows. So I had to learn to, instead of bending over when I was speaking to the crown, I kneel down so that we're at eye level, but I'm not, my chest is not out there for the world. Gentlemen wearing short tunics, please wear underwear or don't bow. Just some little simple things. So court itself. Court itself is both amazing and frustrating. It's the place where if anything can go wrong, it will. It's the place where everybody's watching all of the time. Before you even walk out that door, process in for court, just make sure things are organized. Hopefully your head of retinue and your scribe and your herald and your head lady in waiting or whatever have gotten everything sorted and organized. Never fear, there's times where you're like, oh shit, this one scroll was still drying. We have to go grab it from the tent. But make sure that things are, the more organized you can be going into it, the better everything is going to be coming out of it. So pre-organize the order of business. I personally, I don't have it in here. I use colored 3x5 cards for court business. That's something that I picked up years ago. I don't even know if anybody still uses 3x5 cards. I don't know. But I color coded 3x5 cards. So it was, I don't even remember now, like white was an award of arms and green was an announcement. And yellow was a Jean de Leon, or whatever the color coding was. That makes it so much easier when you're organizing court to make sure that you don't have 6 award of arms in a row and then a laurel and then 4 announcements. Like, you want to break this stuff up. Make sure that any props, again, just like theater, if there are props, make sure they are there. Make sure that this happens more often than not at royal coronations. There's the scepter and the orb and the rod. Make sure they're there. Just saying. I've had to go look in the middle of the, in the royal trailer 15 minutes before court because we forgot to grab them out earlier, right? So any props, gifts, whatever, make sure that it's there. And bring it to behind the thrones before court. I mean, processing in with things like the rod and scepter is great, but nobody needs to see you process in with the gift baskets or the garbage bag that you're going to use to clean everything up afterwards. Ceremony. You have the ceremonies, scrolls, necklaces, something to drink for the crown, for the herald, for yourself. we'll talk about drinks in a second too. Pens, 3x5 cards, and a clock. For the love of baby ducks, use a clock. I have some tips on organizing court, which I can, if we have time, I'll go into that as well. Make sure that things are clean and organized behind the thrones, your tables, your drinks, whatever. It's great to have your 24-pack of Monster back there or whatever for the crown, but make sure that nobody can see it. So before court starts, maybe 10, 15 minutes before, stand in front of the thrones, look at the thrones and go, what is out of place? What looks bad? Oh, there's a, I can see the corner of that IKEA bag, because that's going to show up in a picture and it's going to look terrible. Handing things to royalty. So this is a little bit difficult because I usually do this part interactively. But along with the don't bend over if you're wearing a low-cut dress, when you're handing things to royalty, hand them, it's the best way to describe it. I really do usually make people sit next to me and like hand things around. When you're handing, I'm grabbing whatever, here, notebook. When you're handing something to royalty, you don't want to just like, there's your notebook, right? You want to hand it to the royalty. Again, body language. It's all about body language and showing respect, and also making sure that they have a hold of it. Super important if it's a drink. If you're handing the from behind the thrones, to in front of the thrones a drink, please make sure that whoever is receiving the drink has the drink. Nobody wants that, cranberry juice down the front of a white dress. Behind the thrones, we talked about this a little bit, your activity, your posture, your facial expressions. One of my other pet peeves, I like soapboxes, I have a lot of them. Don't ever lean on the thrones. The number of times I see people doing this behind the throne, it makes me livid. When I've been head of retinue, I've actually kicked people out of court, like kicked out kingdom champions and said, that's unacceptable. This is not your leaning post. This is the throne. So yeah, don't ever lean on the thrones. Sorry. It's also important to move through court quickly, but without losing ceremony. So most of this is going to be on the herald and on the crown. But it also comes into court attendance. So if you're moving along, an award is being given, the necklace, scroll, bitty bobbity, whatever, should be ready. It's not like, oh shoot, I have to go grab that off of the pile. Like here's the single necklace that is going to be given out right now, just to make it run efficiently and smoothly. Also, on a somewhat related note, if you happen to see the court list, which pretty much everybody on retinue at some point or another, it's sitting right there, right? And you see that your friend Joe Bob is getting an award, and Joe Bob said, oh, I'm going to go take a shower. I don't need to go to court. Maybe go send somebody to go get Joe Bob and say, hey, Joe Bob, Sally Jane's getting an award. I know you're going to want to see that, because that will save the lag of, oh, he's in the shower, let me go get him, right? Because there's nothing more maddening than sitting here going, did you sing in the Jeopardy theme song, waiting for somebody to show up in court? So that's part of moving quickly without losing the ceremony. At the same time, this could be the only award that someone receives. You want to make sure that every award, every time someone is brought up in court, that it is special and important, but kind of help keep it moving. Anything you can do behind the scenes to keep it moving. I also love to work with local contacts when for court. So that's, I said earlier that I often reach out to Baron and Baronesses for the help and court recommendations. Same thing, especially if going to some smaller branches that aren't visited as often. They're smaller population centers, and often there are places that the crown will go, but it's off the beaten path, and most of their retinue can't go, whatever reason. Work with the local retinue. Hopefully the head of retinue will reach out to Baron and Baroness or a seneschal if it's a shire, and ask for help, you know, hey, we need some stunt retinue. And on the same token, being stunt retinue is a great way to dip your toe into being retinue without committing to a 6-month term, or, you know, I don't even know how long the baronial terms are anymore. 4 years? 2, 3? Is that 3? Okay, 3.
6, you know.
Well, that's if you re-up, right? So, you know, if you want to just dip your toe in the water, if something you're like, I might be interested in that might be kind of cool. Talk to your Baron and Baroness. I don't know if you're all in TP, but, or your Seneschal or whatever, and say, hey, if the opportunity ever comes up, I'd love to give this a shot. I always love working with local people, because it really gives, what am I going to say? How am I going to say this? It gives me insight into the local group that I wouldn't necessarily have if Royal Retinue came in and just went whoomp, like descends on everything, right? You get a lot more interaction and a lot more understanding of the local group, which is something that I enjoy. Okay. Schlepping, daily tasks and schlepping. So there's various degrees of this. Kind of one of the common things that's thrown around is that the crown's arms are broken, and the crown's not to carry anything, because that's seen as a retainer's work. You want the crown's hands to be empty. There are exceptions to this. In the West, we say that the crown can carry a rose. The queen can carry a rose. That's nothing bigger than a rose, right? Which I think is a little daft, but whatever. I get the point. So, and a lot of crowns, especially first time, they're not used to this. They're like, somebody hands them something and then they will walk around all day with a half-eaten cookie. There's, I think your Baroness has done exactly that. So if you see the crown, you're attending the crown, and they're walking around with a half-eaten cookie, and it's been, you know, a minute, politely say, Your Excellency, would you like me to hold your cookie? And you're going to get the cookie. Just kind of think for a second. And if nothing else, after a while, the crown's arms are going to be full of stuff. Like, people hand them things all the time, whether it's a gift or a note or a cookie, or my child just drew this, I don't know what it is, but you can have it now. There's a point where the crown, the Baroness can't carry anything anymore. So please just politely say, yeah, take that. And then you can shove it into that bag that you're carrying and deal with it later, because there's going to be cookie crumbs at the bottom of that bag at the end of the day. So the Queen's bag, or the retinue bag. We already talked about camp layout. No poison cookies. Your Seneschal is a bad, bad girl. Sorry, I'm reading the chat here too. Fair. Care and feeding of royalty. I did mention having a cook on retainer on retinue is very helpful. There are times where the crown or the Baron Baroness, they can't get out. They're in meetings. Especially for the crown, you know, you've got a coronation event. You've got 4 peerage meetings, plus noble estate, plus ladies of the rose, plus whatever. It's like 6 to 8 hours of meetings per weekend that the poor crown, like, their eyes are bleeding and their brains are leaking out their ears. So they need food. So there are times to, you know, bring them food, snacks to court. Again, coronation courts are notoriously long. It needs to be, if you're doing that, again, it needs to be subtle. There are times where you can walk right into the middle of a peerage meeting and nobody even knows you were there, and you're already gone again. And part of that is it's keeping the blinders on and just being like, yep, I have a plate. I don't have a plate anymore. And then you're out. Don't linger. Never linger, because that will be noticed. The crown will also often get dinner invitations. So most of the time they have their plan sorted out. And this kind of goes with the, it could be the first time somebody speaks to the crown and being polite and saying, oh, thank you very much for the dinner invitation. I will confirm with the crown, but I believe that they are taken care of. They're booked, whatever. A really important thing on care and feeding of the royalty is downtime and couple time. They are on display from the minute they get up in the morning to the minute they go to bed. Somebody is watching them. So it is really important that they get downtime. They get either alone time or couple time or a little bit of both. And it's really important. So help facilitate that. And that could be just knowing the couple, the people well enough to be like, you're a little cranky. Do you need to go for a walk? I don't recommend this for everybody if you don't know them, but generally, like if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you're a little cranky right now. Do you want to go for a walk? I'll be like, oh, you are totally right. I am cranky. I'll be back. Great. And couple time, the crown needs time to be able to prepare for things and make sure that they figured out what they're wearing, and they're wearing, they got that sorted out and they're actually wearing the matching thing and whatever. Just facilitating that. Watching drinking. And when I say watch drinking, I don't mean watch your bear and drink. What I mean is make sure that they're getting enough water. Make sure that there's enough ice in their mixed beverage, whatever the case may be. We had, I won't say his name, but I was on a royal retinue, and the king had a bladder the size of a walnut. Like, he couldn't drink anything for about an hour before court, right? Like, if there was anything, he couldn't hold it. It was the funniest thing ever. However, I'm a bad person. I'm going to say this right now. There was a time when court was going really, really slow. So I just kept refilling his cup with water. That made court go a lot faster. I don't recommend that for everyone, but it's not a terrible plan. But really it's making sure that they have enough water. Coffee. I am a complete see you next Tuesday if I don't have coffee in the morning. And I know a lot of other people are too. So if it's caffeine that's needed, whatever it is. And alcohol, there are times, long courts, especially if it's someone else's court, like it's, you're visiting somewhere else and it's, you don't really have the crown doesn't have any court business. It is very easy to just sit there in the throne and drink and drink and drink and drink. And then you try to stand up and you fall over. So just try to keep an eye on that. And if necessary, politely and gently say, Your Majesty, that's your 5th beer. Do you want some water now? Most of the time, the person will go, oh yeah, no, we're adults. Yeah, that's totally the right thing to do. So, one of the most important things, care and feeding of yourself. This is an important feature, especially for a head of retinue, head guard, something where you're working pretty much all day, every day. Along with nobody needs to stand guard duty for 6 hours. You need to remember that you need to take care of yourself. When I'm head of retinue, I actually have a very dear friend that is my retinue, basically. She makes sure I eat. She makes sure I get my water and that I have peed in the last, 5 hours or whatever. Because it's really easy to just barrel into it and lose track of yourself. And you are no good to your crown if you're, grumpy and tired and have to pee. And remember to get rest and downtime. I am notorious for kind of not sleeping at events. By the end of 6 months of doing that, weekend after weekend, it's really, really tiring. And get some rest, drink your water. That is pretty much all of my notes and my, rambling. I would like to open this up for questions and chat. I don't know if maybe chat's the best way to do it. So we're not everybody's talking at once. So if anybody has any questions or comments, or why is Yafa poisoning cookies?
Because it's a fundraiser and it works really, really well.
Okay. Great.
Is Duvesta on here? I thought Duvesta was here.
Yeah, I'm here.
You explain the poison cookies?
We sold $220 worth of poison cookies at 12th night.
Wow.
Pretend poison.
I
People
figured.
purchased a poison cookie to poison their friends at 12th night, and that's how much
Including
money
the
we
royalty.
raised poisoning their friends.
Oh, I love
And
it.
the current king and queen's children poisoned their parents as soon as they stepped off the throne, and then I, as an officer, poisoned the new king as soon as he sat on the throne as part of my stepping up, taking my duties as an officer and swearing my fealty to the king.
I love
I
it.
poisoned the king as soon as he sat down.
Fantastic.
It all started because Thane Clovis may have poisoned the king of the, or the queen of the west at Ontario Westwall.
So I was there
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
You assisted in that.
I was attending her.
Yep.
Did you?
The
Was this
cookie
like
in my hand.
actual poison, or was this like the time you tried to kill me with breakfast?
No, it was the first set of poison cookies.
That was an accident, Sindri, and he feels really bad.
So now we have the On-Tier Assassins Guild. That's the Yaffa kids that
Yes.
sell the poison cookies. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Queen of the West was really quite amused by all that. She told that story for the rest of her reign. It was fantastic. She was thrilled with that.
And the kids that were involved were thrilled with it too.
They were, oh my God, they were all so cute. It was awesome. All right, back on retinue. I mean, I guess you could keep poisoning the crown. So are there any questions, any, any confusion, any, like, I don't know, got anything?
Oh, I got something.
Okay.
This is Duvesta's husband.
Hi, Duvesta's husband. Do you have a name?
Yes, I am Ulf the Wanderer.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you.
So I haven't done a lot of retinue, but my wife has. You had mentioned that you have been on 20 different retinues, and I want to say my wife did that as well. And at one point, I think she did 6 royal retinues in a row.
That's just daft.
And I don't recommend it.
No.
Take a
2
break.
or 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Yeah.
then take a break.
Yeah. I do completely agree with that. I'm probably gonna put that into my notes because you're absolutely right. I do. I think my longest stint was 3 in a row, but that was to varying degrees. Like I went from, they weren't all the same thing. I know one of them was head of retinue, but one of them was like I was a guard, and then I was head of retinue, and then I was a lady in waiting or something like that. So they were all kind of varying degrees of how involved I was. Yeah, I don't recommend doing 6 in a row because, well, I don't know. I just don't see the point in it, I guess. It's just me.
The 6
But
in
also-
a row were between On-Tier and Summit's Principality.
Right. So that's the other, I now live in a principality now that I'm in the West. When I was in Ontario, I was in Central Kingdom. So I didn't have that overlay where I was, could potentially be on 2 retinues at a time. And I don't recommend that either. I know people that have been on 2 retinues at a time, and that just seems like a bad plan. I like to have my own time too. But on a related note, if you are going onto your 6th retinue in a row, please talk to your spouse and be like, hey, honey, we okay with this? Because I'll be totally honest, I am divorced, and one of the reasons that I am divorced is I spent all of my time in the SCA, and he wasn't really in the SCA. So we grew apart. So that was after 20 years. But, you know, but that was a consideration. And part of that was because I was on a bunch of retinues and I traveled all over the kingdom and I was gone every weekend, right? So it is totally something to consider. And yes, you can still do retinue even if you're the one with a tiny bladder. Just take that into consideration. And I highly recommend 1 hour shifts, not court time. So 1 hour for a guard and lady in waiting for the wandering around time. And I recommend 20-minute shifts for during court time. If you do shorter than that, then there's too much commotion behind the throne and it takes away from the theater aspect. And if you do longer, you can do 20 to 30 minutes, but you want to make sure that everybody gets a chance, for one thing. Kind of depends on the length of the court. But 20 minutes is a good shift for behind the thrones. And pretty much, hopefully, anybody can hold it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But if not, you know, tag out and say, there's got to be somebody else around, even if it's another member of retinue from another, you know, it's somebody from someone's retinue. You'll be like, can you just make sure they don't need anything for 4 minutes while I run to the priv? Oh, I love the idea of a chalkboard on the back of the throne. I don't know who Alan Roberts is, but that's brilliant. No, that's a great idea. Oh, hello, Alan. The clock. So one of the things that I like to do, and I got this from Duchess Ludwiga, a brilliant mind that she is. It's especially important for long crown royal courts, coronations, etc., especially when there are multiple peerages happening, to make sure that everybody is where they need to be at a specific time. Instead of arranging it, I mean, you've got it arranged, you've got your layout, but for major things, peerages, champion changeover, whatever, something like that, have it time specific. So it could be, you know, you've got 40 pieces of business, you've got them all laid out, and your plan is to do a peerage as the 5th piece of business. Well, telling someone, hey, you're the 5th piece of business, not actually really helpful when they're trying to line up their processional and their stuff. But if you say, court's starting at 1 p.m., you're the 5th piece of business, it's going to be at 1:15, 1:20, whatever. And heralds and court coordinators, that you get a feel for how long each thing takes. Oh, handy tip, peerage meetings, or I'm sorry, peerage ceremony, peerage elevations. This is a perfect time for retinue to go pee if you're standing court duty. It takes about at least 15 minutes. You know you have enough time to run to the privy and back, as long as you know that, you know, not everybody leaves at once, right? Yeah, that's one of my secret little trips is there's been a lot of people that I know that have been elevated that I missed their elevation because I was peeing. But the clock, tell people it's, you know, the peerage is at 1:15, and that, look at the clock, and at 1:15, whatever, even if we're now on the 7th piece of business because things went faster, then it's time to put it in. Or maybe we're on the 3rd piece of business, but you're going to put it in because it's time specific. And then you can shuffle around the other things as needed. But also just the clock, it really, having a little clock behind the thrones helps keep people on track and on time, because a lot of people don't wear watches at events. I wear one every minute of every day because that's just who I am. So people lose track of time. It's known fact. So keeping a clock there keeps everybody on the time. You could put a clock on one and a chalkboard on the other. Yeah, absolutely. Like the way you guys are thinking. All right. Anything else? Any other questions or? All right.
Are we free to contact you if we do have questions?
Right there.
Got it?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
we unmuted?
You are unmuted now, Your Excellency.
I'm sorry. I meant, thank you.
Subtle.
Right? Aren't I amazing that way? We really just wanted to say thank you so much for teaching this class for our group. I've taken your retinue class before when I was getting ready to be retinue for Lindis, and I really appreciate the depth that you go into with all of the positions and the helpful handy tips. Yes.
Yeah.
There are helpful handy tips because I have done whatever the thing is that you're not supposed to do. I've done it. I mean, I own that.
I would say for retinue, it is really handy if you're keeping track of time, because when you're wearing a coronet, you lose all sense of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And some people are just bad with time in general, right? Like I'm yeah, there you go. I'm one of those people with like an internal clock. I can pretty much tell you what time of the day it is at within a 15 to 20 minute accuracy. I realize I am weird. I'm for many reasons, but that's one of the reasons I'm weird.
Fortunate, you mean.
Yeah. But yeah, it is really easy to lose track of time. So I recommend, even if you're not a regular watch wearer, if you're a regular watch wearer, just keep wearing your watch at events. If you're not, just make sure there's a watch in the retinue bag, in the handy bag. I actually I tie it on a string to the handle, right? So you're not like digging around in the bottom of there. You can just grab it out really easily. Because yeah, time is an important thing. Raven asked about garb to match the crown's time period. Yes, no, doesn't matter. It really depends. Personally, I generally try to, just because, again, I have a theater background, so from a theater perspective, I think that it looks better. But it's really, it looks fine without it. I mean, the SCA is such a broad range that it doesn't, it's not a big deal. I do, like I said, I do. And also, or at least try to be maybe in the colors, right? If the rain has colors, whether it's the baronial colors or the royal colors or just their personal colors, right? To try to stay in the colors, but don't break yourself. Don't go making something new if that's not your thing. Like, I do it because I sew. If it's not your thing and it's going to be a hardship, oh, honey, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Making a loner throne against Baron. Okay. I'm sure is there an in-joke about the Baron of Beef? I don't know.
I think it's a generic baronial statement, like just generic baronial.
I do, having loner thrones around, and it doesn't have to be a throne. I have just some great period SCA chairs that have probably been thrones more often than I've sat in them, I think. So yeah, this is having extra period chairs around is great. I can assure you that whatever visiting royalty may be there, they are just happy there's somewhere to put their butt. Oh, they're running away from retinue. I don't let my royalty do that. That's the answer there. That is, honestly, it's rude and shitty. And there are people that think it's a game, and that's fine. And you know what you are now? On your own. But that's me. I personally think it's a really horrible game to play on your retinue, especially young, inexperienced retinue, which is usually the person who gets ditched because they don't know what to look there. They're not savvy of the sign of that royalty is about to ditch. And then they are A, mortified, and B, afraid that they're going to get fired or they're never going to get anywhere in their art or whatever. I've seen horrible things from that. So looking at you too. You wouldn't. I know you wouldn't.
They can usually.
Or if you
I was going to say they can track me by volume.
I relate to that statement.
You're gonna giggle so much that everybody's gonna be, oh, she's running away again. Like,
No, mine's just wait 5 minutes and they'll be like, oh, I hear her. She's over there.
right? That there is that
Mostly
too.
it's just, does she have a retinue with her? No? Okay, cool. It's time to go tail her.
Right. Right.
There is that. It's
Is
not
she doing
deliberate.
something? Okay, time to go take that from her.
Yeah. I'm working on it.
Most royalty, almost every royalty that I know that has played that little game of ditch their retinue, it has bitten them in the ass, because then they get cornered by, Sir talks a lot and they can't get out of it because they don't have retinue. So maybe it's a little, more Freudian there.
One thing I want to mention is if you have somebody that you're on retinue with and they go into the bathroom, take the crown away from them.
Thank
Doesn't
you.
matter. They might say, oh no, it's okay. No, it's not okay.
Not okay.
Take it
So
away.
thank you so much. Oh my God. So this is usually part of the role playing, the interactive part that I do. And I totally skip that whole section because it's hard to do like this. Yes, the crown. The only exception is if it is secured in with the hair. Like I know several queens that have like braided and it's not going anywhere, and it's going to be way harder to take it off than to do that. So a couple things about the crown. So the crown, this is a crown. Well, this is a coronet, but whatever. It is never a bracelet. Ever, ever, ever. It is, you never like fling it about willy-nilly. If the crown hands you if the royal person hands you the crown, or you have to retrieve it from the tent or whatever, you don't do this, right? This is how you hold it. And in fact, you hold it when you're walking with it, you hold it with the front, the front out like this. When you hand it to the crown, you turn it so that they can just put it on, right? But you don't want to walk around with the back of the crown out. Certainly not my cornet, because it's just held together with string. So always this, never a bracelet, and don't put it on. For the love of God, this is not yours. Don't put it on. And there are times where the crown needs to take it off, whether it's going to the restroom, totally fair. Often the crown will wear, the royal person will wear the crown out for the first hour or two of socializing in the evening. There's a point where once it gets a little bit too drunk out, the crown needs to go to bed. That means that this needs to go to bed. Person can stay out and party till the cows come home, but there is a point where the regalia needs to go to bed. And sometimes it's being a little, saying, hey, Your Majesty, if you're going to have another drink, why don't we put the crown to bed? And they could be totally happy with what they're doing and be like, oh, that's a good idea, and hand you the crown for you to go secure. What does securing regalia mean? Securing regalia means putting it where it belongs. It does not mean tossing it onto their bed. It does not mean, just throwing it inside the tent. There's going to be a box. There's going to be something that it goes into, and it needs to go into that. Especially at camping events where there's a lot of moisture in the air, because nobody wants to be spending all their time buffing up the crown and trying to get any oxidization off of it. And there's other pieces of regalia as well. Obviously the crown is like the big thing that you can see. But there are, depending on the royalty, there's maybe a necklace or a collar of state or a ring or whatever. But it all kind of goes under the same bucket, right? I wouldn't take someone's ring off of their finger when they're drinking too much, but yeah, the crown is, and the crown, not only, it kind of depends on the situation. For like indoor events where there's a, separate restroom, the person wearing the crown walks in and then takes it off. Obviously in a portable toilet, that's not, that doesn't work. So what you see is a line of retainers outside of the toilets, each with a crown, right? But for indoor events, I prefer that the royalty actually goes into the restroom with the crown on and then comes out with the crown on. But in between, know that someone else is holding it. They're really surprisingly sturdy. So they can take a lot of damage, but please don't do it. just don't. Thank you. I need to put that back into my notes because that's, yeah. And along with because it goes with handing things. Like, oh God, I just made this connection in my brain. I treat the crown like I would treat a horse that I've never met before. Open hands, right? If you're handing them something, open hand. If you're taking something, open, palm up, right? Yeah. I don't know why I do that, but apparently crowns are scary. I don't know. Just so not true at all.
Question real quick.
Yeah.
This is on Terra. It does rain.
Yes.
So is it appropriate to wipe down the crown before you put it in the box for them?
Yes, please do. Please do. Hopefully there is a polishing cloth in there. And everybody's different, but even just wiping it off with your tunic just to get the worst of it off. Yes, please do. And also on crowns, don't ever polish it yourself. Make sure it goes to an appropriate jeweler. I have seen just some horrible things that I shall not speak of. But don't ever try to do it yourself. There are amazing, brand. You got brand to use that, right? Torfin is amazing. There are plenty of people that do amazing work. Don't ever put toothpaste on your crown, ever. Yeah. Oh, thanks. So what do you do if you notice your royals are about to walk out in public wearing something problematic, like Trimgate? Okay. This is good. So we had an Ontario head crown many years ago that I did sewing for. In the moral of this story is I made pants. She chose not to wear them. There was a crown that every time she was wearing a lovely Scythian dress, split all the way up the sides and just laced. And every time she sat down on the throne, her legs were open and you could see right everywhere you didn't need to see. We actually made a sign for her, which was something to the effect of, "Your Majesty, I can see your hoo-ha." And that, yeah. So, and the great part was her king was wearing a short Roman Greek tunic, and every time he sat and crossed his legs, a little twig and berry stuck out the bottom. So if you see that, tell them. Just tell them, and they can then make their own decisions. It is not our job to be the police, but we can advise the crown and advise just as, and do it the same way as you would advise your friend, right? Like if your best friend was about to step out with trim that looked like swastikas, be like, you probably don't see this because it's an amazing period pattern, totally documented, but maybe in this environment, the times we live in today, maybe that wouldn't be such a great idea. Yes, the crown jewels are not to be seen. Totally true. So what they do with the information is totally on them. Because obviously you can't change what they're, you can't make them not wear something, but if you spot something, let them know. It's entirely likely that it just didn't cross, they don't see it, right? So, God. All right. Anything else? Anybody else? Now that we've talked about, royal twigs and berries.
Well, if that's it, then I think we'll.
And what a note to end on. There you go.
I know, right?
I will say His Excellency enjoys wearing pants. So yeah, for posterity.
Good on you, man.
Yeah. I second. I think Christmas and Weston say thank you. We would like to tack on our thank yous. We really appreciate you visiting us.
I'm happy to do this, and I'm actually going to put so you can find me on Facebook at Ula Paulson, or email. I could type. Yeah, Facebook, Ula Paulson, email ula1066@gmail. And if you, 2 days from now, you'll be like, oh, what about this? Like, just popped in your head, reach out to me. I'm always around. Like, I live here now. So,
I noticed your setup. It's lovely.
well, I'm doing so many different Zoom things, and this is now my home. It's normally my craft room. So it's normally.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, yes.
But my coworkers were starting to think I was a complete nut job. So I
Oh.
whatever. But actually, mostly I did that for Saga Saturday. So I don't know if you all have heard this. I'm going to plug this right now. My friend Kinhild from Awertha and I have started doing Saga Saturday. And what are you doing?
I'm sneezing.
So 11:30 Saturday mornings, we are going live on Facebook and doing Norse Saga geeking out because we're nerds. So that's the biggest reason that I have this up is we wanted a clean backdrop for Saga.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I had a banner up there for a while, but I don't have one that's like the right dimension and it looks weird and yeah.
Sounds like a future project.
Oh, I know. I have plenty of projects. I live on a little hobby farm, so I spend all of my nice hours outside and my inside hours, with muscle relaxants. So
We understand. As Zuleika commented, I have a lovely little.
Yes, I noticed your lovely little.
Oh man, but yeah. We can chat all night.
We can, but we're not going to because, I know stuff to do. But thank you so much. I am happy to be able to do this and kick it off. And that is quite the, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Randy plays a few games.
Maybe that should be the next pandemic meme will be, this is my craft room.
Right.
What are you barking
And
at?
then I'll show you our house.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Like I said, if you've got questions, reach out to me. I try to be nice and friendly. Doesn't always happen, but I'll at least answer you.
Thank you, Ula.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.